Will Desmond Ridder perform in front of the home crowd, or will it be another letdown?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. So, guys, if you don't know me, I'm Aaron Freeman, your very humble host, been covering the Falcons for many years, formerly at falcfans.com, RIP, no longer on Twitter, RIP, right?
Yes,
Jarvis,
I was waiting for that. Yes. RIP Falcons. I feel comfortable talking about it now. I love it, man. I love it.
And, I'm, of course, as usual, to wrap up the week, joined by Jarvis Davis, one of many folks on the Locked On NFL live kickoff show, as well as Locked On Sports Atlanta. We'll plug a little bit later in the episode where you can check out Jarvis and Tanitra now every week with Kyle Krabs on that Locked On NFL Live each and every Friday to get you guys geared up for the weekend's action. And of course, we always appreciate all the everydayers out there. And if you want to join the club and become an everyday, all you got to do is listen to the podcast each and every day, or watch the podcast on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. So with all that rigmarole out of the way, Jarvis, let's get into the conversation that we have weekly on this podcast ahead of our Locked On Falcons, Locked On Sports Atlanta postcast each and every Sunday live after the game. Just to sort of wet your whistle, guys, as you guys listen to this episode go in the weekend. For you, Jarvis, what is your sort of key to victory for this Falcons team entering this Week 5 matchup against the Houston Texans?
I think that, first name Desmond, last name Ridder.
Yeah.
I think that's the name that's been hot all the weekend, because it's gotten to the point where people are talking about Justin Fields and trading for Justin Fields. And I'm just like, man, come on. Like, I'm not saying throw the man in the trash, but, I'm not saying, hey, he deserved to be the starter regardless of how he plays. But I really feel like there needs to be some patience, because the dude is, 8 games into his career. And then a lot of people want to compare him to Marcus Mariota. But actually, that's not fair as well, because Marcus Mariota had been in the league for quite some time, and we knew who he was. And sometimes I question what did Arthur Smith see in him for him to come in as the starter. But I think that's not what we're dealing with right here. I really feel like Desmond Ridder has the opportunity to at least start the process as far as like proving he can play in the NFL, because he's played well at home. He's just been awful on the road. And like you said, Jacksonville was definitely a sign of that. The Detroit Lions, okay, a little shaky there. But when you take a look at the whole picture, I feel like this game falls not solely on him, but he is going to be a big factor as to whether or not the Falcons have an opportunity to win this game, along with the offensive line that has to play better. And I think that, the way – and I think that starts with the run game. Like, that running game has to get started. And also Desmond Ridder has to take advantage of the opportunity that he does get if he does get pressure. And we know more than likely he's going to get pressure, because, hey, he kind of crumbled under it. And once that's out on film, we know teams are going to follow that lead when it comes to that type of stuff. So I think if it's a matter of him just making sure he take advantage of the opportunity that he get, and the offensive line making sure they at least get that running game going so he can have some of those opportunities to take advantage of throughout the game.
Yeah. We'll talk about the offensive line a little bit later, because I got some thoughts on that as well. But, the man of the week, it has been Desmond Ridder, and
absolutely.
And understandably so. Like, it was a very rough outing in London. And Jarvis, we feel so far away from that 2-0 start, now that the Falcons have lost 2 games, and it's just like, well, I agree with you. Like, it's not to sit here and say that Desmond Ridder doesn't need to play better, because we both agree he definitely needs to play better. I think everybody agrees he needs to play better. And even after the 2-0 start, I was like, we still need to see Desmond Ridder play better, right? But it does feel like everybody's just like, well, abandon ship now, and let's trade for this quarterback, or let's bench him for Taylor Heineke. And it's just like, it does feel like, again, Desmond Ridder was certainly the biggest problem in London to the team, but he's not the only problem that I think this team has to overcome. But I agree with you, Jarvis. He can do a lot. Again, I'm not expecting him to go out there and throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns or anything like that, but he can do a lot to just play a, what's that word we keep using weekly going back to last year? That clean football game, Jarvis, that we've been searching for. We were searching for it throughout last year with Marcus Mariota. We were searching for it this year with Desmond Ridder. We're still looking for that sort of clean football game that will allow, the strengths of this football team, like the run game, like the defense, to shine. And getting into that conversation, let's jump into that conversation about the run game and talk about this offensive line, because a week ago we weren't really talking about the quarterback that much. We were talking about the offensive line, right. And I want to talk a little bit more about the offensive line, but that will we'll keep that conversation going as we continue today's episode here with Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta. We here in Atlanta love positionless football, and Bird Dogs might be the Bijan Robinson of close, right? You know how Bijan looks good in any formation? Bird Dogs is going to make you look good in any occasion. You can wear them to the beach like I did this summer when I forgot to pack my swim trunks. You can rock them at the gym. You can wear them at the game, go out for date night, or you can just lounge about the house in your Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs invented cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches to give you that way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice any of the movement. So every day looks like leg day for you. And they also use anti-stink, sweat-wicking fabric that's going to keep you cool and dry all day long. So take advantage of this positionless product by going to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL and enter the promo code LockedOnNFL at checkout, all in lowercase, for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. No, that's not all in lowercase. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about the other sponsor for today. You can capitalize Locked On NFL however you want. You spell it however you want. Just spell Locked On NFL. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. So before we get into this conversation about the Falcons run game and their offensive line, since I got my guy Jarvis in front of me right now, I got to tell you where you guys can check out Jarvis each and every day now that, ATL Day Ones is, in the past. I'm sorry, RIP ATL Day Ones. Yes. But, you can still check out Jarvis and Tanitra each and every week, every Friday on Locked On NFL Kickoff Live. And guys, you don't even have to do anything. If you're already subscribed to Locked On Falcons or any of the Locked On NFL channels, it will drop every single Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. You got Jarvis, you got Tanitra, you got Locked On Dolphins and Locked On NFL Scouting co-host Kyle Krabs. They're breaking down every game for the upcoming slate. You're getting in-depth analysis, fantasy updates, betting angles, all that and more. Plus, local analysis from folks like myself, Cody Davis of Locked On Texans, to get you guys geared up for each and every game. So check out Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. on any Locked On NFL YouTube channel. So Jarvis, right, as you said, Desmond Ridder's the man of the week, right? Absolutely. But he's not the only issue with this Falcons offense, right? And, I've heard other people say it, and I kind of agree with him. That's why, the people that have been calling all week for, like, we got to put Taylor Heineke in the lineup and, like, that's going to magically solve all the Falcons problems. Like, I'm not there yet. Again, we might get there later this month, maybe potentially if Desmond Ridder doesn't improve, but I'm not there quite yet. And so to me, this kind of, and I'm curious how you feel about this, Jarvis, this kind of has to be the get right game for the Falcons offense, and especially the other elements of their offense around Desmond Ridder, especially this run game, this offensive line, right? Because next week they got the Commanders coming to town, and they got some dudes, right?
Dudes up front,
and it's not to say Houston doesn't have a couple of dudes that, Jerry Hughes, Will Anderson, Malik Collins, they got some good players up front, but I don't know if they got the same caliber guys that Washington has. And if you can't get right against this Houston team that's not a particularly good run defense, right? They're not as bad as they used to be. They were the worst run defense in the league for like 3 years running. They've improved to closer to league average, but you're not going to get this type of setup next week against Washington. So if you can't get right against Houston, I don't know if you can get right against Washington, is basically what I'm trying to sit here and say. And so, while, again, Desmond Ridder's the man of the hour, the man of the week, I'm really focused on this offensive line, this running game. Take pressure off the quarterback by running the football. Let's have a week like we did in week 2 where we just pounded it down the Packers' throat. Feed Bijan. CP should be back this week. Cordero Patterson, Algier, right? We got this 3-headed monster of a backfield. This offensive line, I don't want to see Will Anderson making Caleb McGarry look bad, but you know what Caleb McGarry can do? He can mash Will Anderson into the dust, right? He's a very good run blocker. That's one thing that both you and I agree about Caleb McGarry. Mm-hmm. So let's run at them and let's beat up this team. Are you in agreement with me on this?
Yes, 3 words, man. Follow the money. Where the money resides, on the right side. Like that's where I need to go. That's where I want to see. I want to see Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry get that doggone run game going, man. Like, line down and say, you know what? We don't give a crap what y'all think, what we about to run. We're about to run the football, and we about to run it down your throats. And I think that they need to get back to that style of play. Like what we saw in the first couple of games, we start to see, like, they were really taking advantage of those guys up front. And, they played against a team in the Green Bay Packers. They had a lot of young pass rushers, guys who can get home, and they did a pretty doggone solid job to the tune of, being down 12 points, and coming back and getting the dub against them. So it's there. We've seen it before. We've seen them be able to run the ball successfully. We've seen Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson start to get off, like, whether it be run or the pass. Like, I want to see more of those guys being at the game at the same time, because I feel like you get yourself a little bit more options or making the defense think a little bit more when both of those guys are in the game, because they're just certain things that they have to pay attention to when 7 starts moving around pre-snap. And I think that I'm all for giving the defense as much to think about before that ball is snapped. So I think that Arthur Smith should be able to use that to his advantage this week when you have so many young guys on that defense. Because here's the thing, man, like, we understand what the identity is of this team. Like, and I think that the Falcons, showed that, hey, they went on the road against Detroit. Like, it was a struggle, don't get me wrong, but I felt they played like they belonged for the most part in that game. So I think they need to prove that, especially against this home crowd, man. I mentioned this earlier with Desmond Ridder and how he plays at home and on the road. Like, it's just a vast difference between those two different spaces. But I mean, I even asked Arthur Smith about that, and he was just saying how, he just got to figure out a way to get Ridder comfortable. The easiest way to do that, run that damn ball, man.
I agree. One of the things I've been talking about this week on the pod is, like, one of my criticism of Arthur Smith is, like, I feel like he loves these, like, heavy formations and sort of condensing the field. And I feel like he needs to do more to open up the field, spread it out, right? Like, I know we got all these big guys, right? But I'm thinking, like, we're talking about positionless football with bird dogs, right? You got all these, like, big wide receivers. And if you go and start playing, with 3 wide receivers, or, you start using Kyle Pitts as a wide receiver, as we've seen them do from time to time. And, you can play that 12-2 tight end set, but Kyle Pitts is really kind of a wide receiver in that formation. And you can get these big guys, Drake London, Mac Hollins, Kyle Pitts, Jonnu Smith, etc., out on the perimeter to block some of these smaller corners. And I feel like if you can spread it with that, and teams are going to match with, softer boxes with nickel, like, that's another way that you can get the run game going. Like, I'm not saying abandon Keith Smith. I'm not saying, maybe I am saying abandon Michael Pruitt, but, at this point, like, I feel like, playing the style that they love to play. Again, it worked very well last year, but, like, it's a new year. And I feel like you got to give some changes. You got to do some horizontal stuff, maybe some sweeps and some reverses, some end arounds to Scotty Miller and Bijan Robinson, and get this Houston Texans team, going this way and misdirection and all that stuff. Like, just, get some mix in here, get back to being that sort of creative run game and run scheme that Arthur Smith is known for, and get back to that. And once you sort of establish, like, this is what we're going to do, and that's what everybody's going to key on, then you can start building up the passing game again. And hopefully, again, it's not going to happen overnight, but hopefully, you can continue to make progress there. So by the end of the season, hopefully, I'm not saying the Falcons can just, lose the next 6 games or anything like that, but, win games, be competitive, and then hopefully by the end of the season, you'll start to see Desmond Ridder turn that corner and be the type of quarterback that we all were hoping he would be, later this year, where you build towards that. Is that fair to say as well?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. Like, the more creative you can get with offense, I mean, that's why they brought these guys in, right? Like, because you have a 6'6" guy that you can line up outside. Now, granted, given the play of the quarterback, I really feel like sometimes you need to line him up as a tight end so he can throw to him like he's a tight end. You know what I mean? Yeah. I feel like there are sometimes instances where he kind of leads them sometimes, and I'm like, hey, man, just put it on him. Like, he's 6'6" for a reason. I'm sure he played a lot of basketball, growing up. He and Drake always talk about playing one-on-one against each other. So I think if you can kind of like get into the mindset of, being creative on offense, throwing some different formations, like if you versus 12, 13 personnel, hey, get into 11 personnel and go out there and try to run the rock and line Jonnu Smith out there at the slot and Kyle Pitts on the same side. Like, those are some of the things, like you said, as much as you can get the defense thinking pre-snap, the better it's going to work out for you, because you have some guys that can take advantage of that, like a Bijan Robinson, like a guy like Tyler Algier, because I think that he still brings some value from a pass pro standpoint. And I think that you're going to need that, as much protection as you could possibly get. Like, you need it out there. And I think that, with how this Falcons team has been playing and the identity that they want to play with, like, in order to be able to get the job done that you need to get done, which is get a dub against the Houston Texans, you're going to have to get creative. You're going to have to figure it out, because you have to get off to a good start. You can't start slow, because the people sitting in them seats, the butts in them seats in Mercedes-Benz on Sunday, they will turn on you. I promise you. Yeah. They don't want to see that. Like, I promise you, there were a lot of people talking about number one up there in Chicago and that blue and orange. And I was like, man, the man's not on this team. There are no real conversations about this happening. Why are we talking about Justin Fields? And the response was, we're talking about Justin Fields because Desmond Ridder is not playing well. And people don't have time for it, man. But they built this team to win this year. They built this team to win the division this year. And these last couple of games, that ain't happening. If that's an indicator of what it's going to look like at the end of the year, there's no way the Falcons can win a division if they keep playing like they have been playing.
I agree. So we'll see if this run game can give the home crowd something to cheer for, or they didn't leave whatever they had in London and they brought it back, right? Customs did not clear that thing at the border or whatever. But we'll wrap up talking about this Falcons defense, because they have been good and reliable this season. It's so nice to say, Jarvis, like, a Falcons defense that you can trust and rely on each and every week to show up and make plays. So we'll talk about, whether that unit's going to show up and make plays against, a pretty red hot Texans offense and CJ Stroud. And, I'm sure the home crowd is not looking forward to a rookie quarterback, showing up their own rookie quarterback if that happens. But, I think this Falcons defense may have a couple of things up their sleeve for CJ Stroud, and we'll talk about that as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. Now, I'm sure many of you guys have $10 in your pocket, and wouldn't you love an easy way to turn that $10 into $250 or $250? You can with PrizePicks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you got to do is pick 2 or more players and pick more or less on their projected stats. And the more entries you make, the more money you can make, up to 25 times your money. I love PrizePicks because it's quick, it's easy. Like right before kickoff, like 5 minutes before, I'll throw on the app and I'll be like, you know what? I'm going to take that more on Bijan Robinson's rushing totals, because that just feels like a very reliable bet at this point in time. And, you can If you're worried about Nico Collins going up against this Falcons defense, you can go more, you can go less, right? Last time him and Jeff Okudah, lined up across for him, he kind of shut him down. So maybe you go less this week. Who knows? But however you want to play, take advantage of this quick and easy way to turn $10 into $250 by going to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL. This one's in all lowercase for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. So, Jarvis, as I said, the offensive struggles are taking up all the oxygen in the room. And, despite that, I'm enjoying this Falcons defense playing well. Right? Every week is a test, right? But it's a test that this defense has been, for the most part, passing. I think this week's going to be another test against this Houston Texans team with, CJ Stroud playing really well. They haven't given up a sack the last couple of games. It'd be nice to break that streak and getting pressure. For me, I've been watching Stroud these last couple of games. He's played well. Don't want to take anything away from him, but I'm watching it. I don't know if it's so much CJ Stroud, and some of it to me, I think, is more their offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick from the 49ers. It kind of feels a lot to me like that Green Bay game where we were talking about, hey, Jordan Love, played really well, that week 1 game, but it's like, I think it's more Matt LaFleur, their play caller, and Jordan Love's out there, operating and executing what he's being called. And I feel like that's the case with CJ Stroud a little bit. Not trying to say CJ Stroud is bad or anything like that, but the thing that this Texans team has been very explosive these last couple of weeks. Nico Collins has been killing dudes. I don't know if you got to watch that Steelers game, but they could not cover him to save their life. He was just
can't cover anybody right now.
Right? It's like the Steelers defense, and like you're like, oh, if he's doing this at the Steelers defense, and TJ Watt ain't getting the sack and all this stuff. They had to move TJ Watt away from George Fant of all people to the other side because he wasn't getting. George Fant was locking him down, and it was just like, what is going on?
George Fant, you talking about the same George Fant used to play in Seattle?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah,
it was.
wow.
I was like, "What is happening?
Come on,
what
man.
is happening right now?"
Yeah.
So I was like,
"Something is wrong. Something's terribly wrong right now."
Yeah. So I'm like, even though I'm like sitting here going like, "Oh, I feel like the Falcons can go." This Texas team it's a good football team. This is basically what I'm saying. Similar to what we saw in week 2 against that Packers team, where they put up some points. Then the Falcons defense kind of locked them down in the fourth quarter, and that was allowed the Falcons to get that comeback. And I mentioned it before. Nico Collins, Michigan player. Played against Jeff Okudah, Ohio State player back in 2019. Jeff Okudah locked him down, right? And so I feel a lot better that if we can take away their top weapon, right? And then if we can dial up some pressure against CJ Stroud, Ryan Nielsen, he likes to dial up the pressure. I feel like that's the formula for success, to keep this offense contained so that whatever the Falcons do on offense, running the football, you usually don't put up 30 points running the football, 40, 50 times, right? So, that's maybe an offensive game plan that's going to get you 24 points like we saw the first couple of games.
Yeah.
But I think that's a formula where the Falcons can do just enough defensively, hold this Texans team under, 20, 24 points, and that's a winnable formula. What are your thoughts on this, Falcons defense versus Texans offense matchup?
Yeah, I think that if the defense can hold the Houston Texans to 25 points, because I think 25 points were like a nice sweet spot for them. Because that'll be something that this team can play with a lead. Because there are some things that that I saw from this team, especially specifically on the interior, and I feel like David Onyemata, man, he is really starting to turn it up a little bit up in the middle, and I think that Grady Jarrett, he's starting to come around as well. My only concern is that off the edge, so I really feel like if those two guys can kind of get things going, and we know that we talked about George Fant, but Houston had to really do some patchwork on that offensive line because they've been decimated with injuries and they've had to kind of just figure it out. So if a guy like Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata, the one thing about all quarterbacks, no quarterback likes pressure right in his face. And I feel like that's where the Falcons have the advantage on the interior of their offensive line, interior, in the interior. So if we're talking about the Falcons getting a win, I really feel like Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata had probably one of their best games they've had in this season. And I feel like they're capable of doing that. because those guys, what they've been doing as of late. So that's where I'm at with it. And I feel like, CJ Stroud, like, don't get it twisted. Dude's doing something special. Like, we ain't seen this since Cam Newton? And we know Cam went off. We threw for over 4,000 yards in his rookie season. So and he's kind of pacing on that way. But I think that the strength of this Falcons defense is the secondary. Jeff Okudah, game 2 back, now, and hopefully, he'll be out there, more likely he'll be out there as a starter on the side opposite of AJ Terrell. And when you talk about that and then piece that with Jordan, oh my God, Jesse Bates, excuse me. I don't know where I get that name from, but Jesse Bates,
Jordan. What's that all about?
Michael Jordan, the Michael Jordan of safeties. Like, I guess I was trying to make some type of comp there, whatever. I can make that right now. I guess
come a long way.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Like, subconsciously, I'm like loving on Jesse Bates, but I'm still trying to hold back because I don't want you to sit there and start smiling, get that giggling like you're doing right now. But yeah, man, pairing these guys off, that secondary against a guy like Nico Collins and, like you said, Jeff Okudah got some experience against him, and also Tank Dell, the guy who we saw down there at the Senior Bowl. So he's had a game where he's gotten off too. But he's a rookie. Those guys go through ups and downs. So I think that the Falcons have a big opportunity to shut down this passing game. And we know they've been stout against the run as well. So if you put them in a situation where, hey, they don't know where nothing is working and they're holding it down, like the offense, they almost have to put some points on the board, to give these guys a reason to continue to do what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I want to make it clear. I don't think CJ Stroud is bad or overraid or anything like that.
Oh, no, I'm not. No.
But I know some people. I know some people will like, Aaron CJ Stroud he's fake. It's
Aaron Freeman said CJ Stroud's a bum on his pod. He didn't say it on Twitter, but
if you don't get pressure on him, he will pick you apart. I will say
he's gonna
that.
light your butt up.
Yeah.
Ask the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yes. So
they understand.
They got pressure on him, and he still picked.
He still don't know.
Yeah. So
slinging that tater, man.
I want to make that clear. But like, I do feel like the Falcons have the formula for success because I feel like they can dial up pressure. I think they'll hopefully they'll do a better job covering Nico Collins and Tank Dell than what Jacksonville and Pittsburgh did the last couple of games. And then, as you said, those guys up front, that's where the Texans got a couple of question marks. They might get Laramie Tunsil back this week. They might get Titus Howard back, but they won't be moving him. It sounds like he will be playing left guard instead of right tackle. And if you guys watched yesterday's crossover Thursday with Locked On Texans host Cody Davis, he was talking about how they had Titus Howard as a guard, a couple of years ago, and he was a disaster there. And they already have their backup center as well. So, those some opportunities for some of these, interior guys to get some pressure as well. So we'll see if the Falcons defense can show up. I think they will. And then obviously the bigger question mark is whether or not the Falcons offense will show up this week. But I think they will, because I think the home team, the home field advantage will be back in stride. And, I just, I feel like they got 2 home games. And this is the more winnable of the two, at least right now. Again, I haven't done a deep dive on Washington, but it does feel like Washington is built to give them much more problems than Houston is built to give them. And so if they can't beat Houston at home, it's gonna be tougher sledding. At least
might be a little trouble.
Yeah. So we'll see what the Falcons do. And that's gonna do it for us here on today's Locked On Falcons, guys. We'll probably do extra episode for you guys. I didn't get to all the mailbag questions I wanted to get to earlier this week. So we'll talk about, trade talk. That was one of the questions. Someone was like, you think the Falcons going to make a midseason trade for a quarterback? And I'm like, but I'll answer that fully. I'll take a deeper look into that tomorrow on the podcast. So continue to make us your first listen. Of course, check out Jarvis on Locked On Sports Atlanta, as well as the Locked On NFL Kickoff Live Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, along with Tanitra. And of course, Jarvis and I will be back Sunday afternoon. I got to keep it straight, Jarvis, because the morning game threw me off last week. So we'll be back Sunday afternoon after the kickoff to talk about, how, CJ Stroud was not proud in this game because what the Falcons defense did to him, as well as what Bijan is going to do. It's going to be so pretty, so pretty. So
Mustard
looking forward
everywhere.
to that, Jarvis. All right.